She was the poor Nigerian schoolgirl everyone mocked, but years later, she walked back into that same hall, not as a victim, but as the owner of the entire company. In the bustling city of Lagos, where the streets roared with Danfo buses, vendors calling out their wares, and the air smelled of roasted corn and suya, there lived a young girl named Amara Okafor. She was no different from many other children her age, except that life had placed her at the very bottom of fortune's ladder. Amara was barely 13, thin and frail, her dark skin glistening in the sun as she hurried along the dusty road that led to her school. She wore a faded uniform, its once bright blue color now pale from countless washes. Her shoes had holes at the front, so worn out that her small toes often peeked through. Yet every morning she polished them with palm oil to make them shine, hoping no one would notice. Her mother sold fruits by the roadside at Ohuelegba, struggling each day to pay the school fees. Her father had died years ago in a construction accident in Abuja, leaving the family with nothing but debts. Amara knew her education was not just a chance for herself, it was the only light of hope for her mother and younger brother. But in school, hope did not shield her from cruelty. The students of Queensbridge Academy, a prestigious private school in Lagos, were children of politicians, oil magnates, and successful businessmen. They came in neat uniforms, polished black shoes, and shiny bags imported from abroad. Amara stood out like a lone tree in a desert. "Look at her shoes!" one of the girls sneered as Amara walked past the school gate. Her name was Nosy Adeniyi, the daughter of a wealthy real estate developer. She was tall, confident, and always surrounded by friends. "Do they sell those at the dump market?" The group of classmates burst into laughter, their mocking voices echoing down the hallways. Amara tried to keep her head down, clutching her worn-out books tightly to her chest. The sting of their words hurt, but she reminded herself of her mother's words each morning. "My daughter, ignore them. Remember, education will lift you higher than gold or diamonds." But the laughter did not stop. Tunde Balogun, the son of a senator, joined in. "Maybe we should start a charity, Save Amara's Shoes Foundation," he said loudly, and everyone roared with laughter again. That day in class, Amara sat quietly at the back, her heart heavy. She was brilliant, one of the brightest minds in the school. But brilliance was invisible when poverty cast such a long shadow. Her teachers praised her answers, yet her classmates rolled their eyes. They only saw the holes in her shoes, not the light in her mind. During lunch break, when others unwrapped jollof rice packed in shiny lunchboxes, Amara ate a simple akara her mother had given her. She sat alone under the mango tree, pretending not to hear the whispers and laughter aimed at her. But deep inside, something was building. It was not anger, no, it was determination. One day, she promised herself silently as she looked at the mocking faces of her classmates, "I will rise. One day, I will stand where none of you can laugh at me again." And when that day comes, you will remember these moments. That silent vow stayed with her. She didn't know yet how hard the journey would be, nor how much pain she would endure along the way. But destiny, like the Lagos sun, was already burning a path for her, one that would take her from the dust of mockery to the glittering towers of success. And so began Amara's story, a tale of humiliation, resilience, and the fire that poverty sparked in her soul. The next morning in Lagos, Amara woke before the sun had even risen. The sounds of distant generators humming and the call of a rooster filled the narrow streets of Surulere, where she lived with her mother and younger brother, Cheek. Their home was no more than a small two-room apartment, its zinc roof rattling whenever the coastal winds blew. Her mother, Mama Ifeoma, was already awake, arranging mangoes, bananas, and oranges in a wooden tray for the day's sales. Her back was bent from years of struggle, her hands rough from carrying heavy baskets, yet her eyes held a quiet strength. "Amara, my child," she whispered as she tied her wrapper firmly around her waist. "Today, do not let their laughter break you. Remember what I always tell you, education is a weapon stronger than any insult." Amara nodded, though her heart still carried the sting of yesterday's humiliation. She dressed in her washed-out uniform once more, clutching her books. Chike, barefoot and playful, ran to hug her tightly. "Sister, one day you will buy me a big car, eh?" he said with a mischievous grin. Amara laughed softly. Yes, one day, a very big one, bigger than Tunde's father's Jeep. As she walked to school, the city was alive Okadas zipping past, traders setting up stalls, the smell of freshly baked bread wafting from a nearby shop. She passed by tall glass buildings that reflected the morning sun, and each time she looked at them, her heart whispered, "One day, my feet will not only walk past these buildings, they will walk into them, and I will belong there." But school was no kinder that day. During assembly, the principal announced the results of the last mathematics exam. Amara had scored the highest again. The teachers applauded, her name echoing through the courtyard. Yet instead of respect, what followed were murmurs and sneers. "Bookworm," Ngozi muttered under her breath, loud enough for her friends to laugh. "She reads so much because she has no life," another classmate added. Amara held her head high, though her cheeks burned. The truth was, books were her escape. When she opened the pages of her worn mathematics text or a borrowed literature novel, she was no longer the poor girl with broken shoes. She was a queen, a leader, a dreamer walking in worlds beyond Lagos. That evening, as she returned home, she saw her mother struggling with customers at the fruit stall. Some bargained so harshly that Mama Ifeoma nearly gave away her goods at a loss. Amara felt a fire rise within her. She knelt beside her mother and whispered, "Mama, one day I will make so much money that you will never have to sell fruits again." Her mother smiled weakly. "My daughter, it is not money that makes us rich. It is the heart that refuses to give up, and I see that heart in you." But poverty is relentless. Days turned into weeks, and the taunts at school grew sharper. Her uniform tore more, her shoes grew thinner, and sometimes she went without lunch at all. Yet each insult, each mocking laugh planted something deeper inside her. It was like the mango seed her brother had once buried in the soil behind their apartment. At first it looked like nothing, but with time, water, and patience it sprouted into a tiny green shoot. That was how Amara's determination grew hidden, silent but powerful. One afternoon, as she sat under the mango tree at school with her small akara meal, she overheard Ngozi and Tunde boasting about their family businesses. "My father just signed another oil contract," Tunde bragged. "Soon we'll be flying to London for the summer." Ngozi flicked her braided hair. "Well, my daddy said I'll inherit his real estate company one day. Imagine me running the biggest properties in Lagos." Amara sat silently, her heart pounding. Something inside her whispered boldly, "If they can dream of inheritance, then I can dream of ownership. One day, I will not just inherit, I will build my own empire from nothing." That night, she could not sleep. The vision of herself walking confidently into a tall building, people standing respectfully as she passed, filled her dreams. She saw her mother free from struggle, her brother in fine clothes, and herself as a woman no one dared to laugh at again. It was just a dream then, but dreams, when held tightly enough, can turn into destiny. And Amara's destiny was only beginning to take shape. The rainy season had arrived in Lagos, and with it came flooded streets, the smell of wet earth, and children splashing through puddles on their way to school. Amara walked carefully, her shoes soaked, her books wrapped in an old nylon bag to protect them from the rain. By now, she had grown used to the laughter of her classmates. Their mocking no longer pierced her heart the way it once did. Instead, it became fuel firewood to the flame that burned quietly inside her. Among all the teachers at Queensbridge Academy, there was one who noticed her light, Mr. Adewale, the mathematics teacher. He was tall, with glasses perched on his nose, and, unlike many others, he didn't care about a student's background. He only cared about their brilliance. One day after class, he called Amara to his desk. "Amara," he said, studying her with kind eyes, "do you know you are one of the sharpest minds I've seen in all my years of teaching?" Amara lowered her gaze. "Sir, people only see my poor uniform. They don't believe in me." Mr. Adewale smiled. "Let them laugh. Greatness does not announce itself in fine clothes. It announces itself in achievement. And you, my girl, are destined for greatness. I can see it." Those words sank deep into Amara's soul like rainfall soaking dry ground. Weeks later, a notice was pinned on the school's board. It was an announcement of the National Academic Challenge, a competition held in Abuja where the brightest students across Nigeria competed in mathematics, literature, and science. The winning school would receive a scholarship fund and nationwide recognition. Immediately, Amara's heart leaped. She wanted to compete. But when the names were listed for the school's team, hers was not there. Instead, it was the usual faces, Ngozi, Tunde, and 2 others from wealthy families. Amara's chest tightened. She knew she was better prepared than all of them. But how could she argue? Who would listen to the poor girl whose shoes were almost falling apart? That evening, she went to Mr. Adewale. "Sir," she whispered, "why was I not chosen for the competition?" He adjusted his glasses. "Amara, you are right. You are the most deserving. But the school board believes sending you would not represent the image of Queensbridge. They prefer students from respectable families." Her eyes filled with tears. Respectable families. The words cut deep. "But sir," she insisted, "I can win. I can prove them wrong." He paused, then leaned forward. "Then prove it, Amara. I cannot change the list, but I can prepare you. Sometimes life will not open the door for you. Sometimes you must build your own door." That night, Amara stayed awake with a candle burning on the wooden table. She studied until her eyes grew heavy, whispering formulas to herself, solving equations, memorizing lines of literature. Her mother watched silently, her heart aching yet proud. "Amara," Mama Ifioma said softly, "rest, my child, even the stars sleep." But Amara shook her head. "Mama, if I rest now, I will never wake where I belong. I must fight." Days passed, and the competition approached. The chosen students strutted around school, bragging about their upcoming trip to Abuja. They practiced half-heartedly, confident that their wealth already guaranteed victory. But Amara, though not chosen, prepared as if she were going. Then destiny turned. 2 days before departure, one of the selected students fell sick with malaria and could no longer travel. Panic filled the staff room. The principal was furious. "We cannot afford to send a weak team." Mr. Adewale cleared his throat. "We have someone. She is more prepared than anyone else. Amara." The room fell silent. Some teachers frowned, whispering about her background, but time was short, and they had no choice. And so, against all odds, Amara's name was added to the list. When the news spread, the hallways buzzed. Ngozi scoffed. "What can she possibly do? Embarrass us in front of the whole country?" Tunde smirked. "Let her go. Maybe Abuja will give her better shoes." But Amara said nothing. She simply looked up at the sky that evening as the rain poured down and whispered, "This is it, my chance. I will not waste it." The girl they mocked was about to step into the biggest test of her young life, one that would begin to shape the woman she would one day become. The morning of departure came with the first light of dawn. Lagos was still half asleep, the streets quiet except for a few traders already setting up their stalls. Amara stood at the bus station with her schoolmates, her old uniform freshly washed, her books clutched tightly in a small plastic bag. The other students wore neat travel jackets, their suitcases rolling smoothly behind them. Ngozi looked at Amara with a smirk. "Don't sit too close to me on the bus," she muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I don't want to smell the market." The group of classmates laughed, as always. But Amara ignored them. She had only one thing on her mind: Abuja. The journey was long hours of winding roads, passing small villages, lush green landscapes, and checkpoints manned by police. Amara pressed her face against the window, watching the land roll by, her heart swelling with both fear and excitement. For the first time in her life, she was leaving Lagos. For the first time, her dream was carrying her somewhere new. When the bus finally pulled into Abuja, Amara's breath caught. The city was grand wide, clean roads lined with palm trees, tall buildings of glass and steel gleaming in the sun, and an air of authority that made Lagos feel far away. She whispered to herself, "One day I will live here. One day I will walk into these towers not as a visitor, but as a leader." The students were taken to the grand hall where the National Academic Challenge would be held. Schools from across Nigeria were gathered: Kano, Port Harcourt, Enugu, Ibadan. The air buzzed with competition, the hall filled with the brightest young minds in the country. On stage stood a massive banner: "Knowledge is power. Power is the future." When the competition began, tension filled the room. The first round was mathematics. Amara's palms sweated as she stepped up to the buzzer. Questions flashed on the screen: complex equations, probability, algebra. Ngozi stumbled on her first answer, her voice shaky. Tunde barely got through his. But when it was Amara's turn, something in her shifted. Her voice grew steady, her eyes sharp, her answers quick and precise. "Correct," the judge said, again and again. The crowd began to murmur. Who was this girl in the faded uniform, answering with such brilliance? Round after round, Amara shone brighter. In literature, she quoted Shakespeare with ease and recited passages from Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart. In science, she explained principles her classmates barely understood. She wasn't just competing, she was dominating. Back in the audience, the Queensbridge teachers exchanged surprised glances. Even the principal, who had doubted her, sat straighter in his chair. By the final round, only 3 schools remained. The question was a tiebreaker in mathematics so difficult that even the judges whispered among themselves. Amara stepped forward. The room was silent, every eye on her. She studied the problem, her mind racing. For a moment, fear threatened to swallow her. But then she remembered her mother's words. Education is stronger than gold. She remembered Mr. Adewale's voice. Sometimes you must build your own door. She lifted the pen, wrote her solution, and answered. The room froze. The judges looked at each other, then nodded. Correct. The hall erupted into applause. Amara had done it. She had won the challenge for Queensbridge Academy. But more than that, she had proven herself to the world. As she walked off the stage, her classmates stared in disbelief. Tunde muttered under his breath, How? How did she do that? Ngozi's face was pale, her pride shattered. That night, in the dormitory where the students stayed, Amara lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She felt no anger toward her classmates, no desire to laugh back at them. Only one thought echoed in her heart. This is just the beginning. If I can win here, I can win anywhere. She didn't know yet how hard the road ahead would be, but Abuja had given her a taste of victory, and it was a taste she would never forget. The poor girl mocked at school had stood in front of the whole nation and triumphed. And destiny had only just begun to unfold. The victory at the National Academic Challenge in Abuja spread like wildfire. Newspapers carried the story of the girl in the faded uniform who had stunned the judges and outshined the children of the wealthy. Television stations replayed the final moments again and again. Back in Lagos, when the Queensbridge Academy bus pulled up to the school gates, students rushed to see them. Amara stepped down, her small bag in hand, her heart racing. For the first time, there was no laughter, no mocking whispers. Instead, there was silence, followed by hesitant applause. Even those who had laughed at her now stared with something close to respect. But respect from classmates didn't pay bills. At home, life was still the same. Mama Ifeoma still struggled at the fruit stall, and Chike still ran barefoot in the compound. Victory had brought recognition, yes, but recognition does not put food on the table. A week later, the principal called Amara to his office. His face was stern, but his tone had softened. Amara, he said, clearing his throat, your performance has brought honor to Queensbridge. I have received a call from the Ministry of Education. They wish to grant you a scholarship fully funded through secondary school and university. Her breath caught. A scholarship? Yes, he nodded. Your brilliance has been noticed. Abuja was only the beginning. Tears filled her eyes. She thought of her mother bending over baskets of fruit, of her brother's hopeful smile. For the first time, the impossible seemed possible. From that day, Amara's life shifted. She no longer feared school fees. She had access to better books, mentorship, and workshops. But along with blessings came challenges. Her classmates' mockery did not vanish completely. Ngozi, humiliated by the Abuja loss, whispered whenever Amara passed, "Scholarship girl, let's see how long her luck lasts." Tunde, too, carried bitterness. He had grown up believing wealth made him untouchable. To see Amara surpass him was an insult he couldn't swallow. But Amara ignored them. She poured her soul into her studies, staying late at the library, practicing past questions, dreaming of the future. Her brilliance attracted attention. One afternoon, during a career seminar organized at the school, she listened to a guest speaker, Chief Adebanjo, a wealthy Nigerian businessman who owned one of the biggest tech companies in Lagos. He spoke passionately about innovation, entrepreneurship, and the power of creating opportunities rather than waiting for them. Amara sat at the back of the hall, her heart pounding. She had never seen someone command a room like that. His words ignited something deep within her. That evening, she wrote in her notebook, "One day, I will own a company too. Not just any company, a company that changes lives. They may laugh now, but one day they will work for me." Her journey through secondary school was not without hardship. At times, her scholarship stipend was delayed. There were nights she studied by candlelight when the electricity cut out for days. There were days she went without lunch, her stomach rumbling in class. But every struggle became a stepping stone. At home, she began teaching Chike after school, guiding him through his homework. "We must both rise, little brother," she would say. "When I succeed, you will succeed too." By the time she finished secondary school, she had become a name not just in Queensbridge Academy, but in educational circles across Lagos. She had won multiple competitions, written articles for youth magazines, and earned a place at the University of Lagos on full scholarship. The day she received her admission letter, she ran home, waving it in the air. Her mother hugged her so tightly that tears streamed down both their faces. "My daughter," Mama Ifeoma whispered, "your father would be so proud." But university was a different world. Lagos University was filled with students from across Nigeria, bright minds, ambitious souls, and yes, the children of the rich once again. The gap between the haves and the have-nots was wider here, and though she no longer wore a torn uniform, Amara still carried the weight of her background. In her very first lecture, she recognized a familiar face, Ngozi Adeniyi. Dressed in designer clothes, carrying a sleek laptop, Ngozi smirked when she saw Amara. "So, the scholarship girl followed me here too? Let's see how long you last this time." Amara smiled softly, but in her heart she whispered, "I am not here to last, Ngozi. I am here to conquer." And so, the poor girl who had once been mocked in the corridors of Queensbridge stepped into the grand halls of the University of Lagos, ready to begin the next chapter of her journey. What awaited her there would test not just her brilliance, but her strength, her patience, and her vision for the future. The University of Lagos was a city within a city. Its sprawling campus stretched with tall lecture halls, busy walkways, and students rushing from one faculty to another. For Amara, it was a new world, one filled with possibilities, but also with sharp reminders of where she came from. Her scholarship covered tuition, but not everything else. While other students carried sleek laptops and wore the latest fashion, Amara relied on secondhand notebooks and borrowed a friend's phone whenever she needed internet access. Many evenings she walked back to her hostel with empty pockets, too broke to afford even a plate of jollof from the canteen. Yet, she carried herself with quiet dignity. Poverty could dress her in simple clothes, but it could not dim the confidence in her walk. On her very first day in the Faculty of Business Administration, she spotted Ngozi. As always, she was surrounded by friends, her expensive perfume filling the lecture hall. She glanced at Amara, smirked, and whispered something that sent her circle into laughter. Amara ignored her. She had faced worse. Her focus was sharp lectures, group discussions, hours in the library. While others partied late into the night, Amara burned her candle at both ends, devouring books on economics, entrepreneurship, and leadership. She copied long passages into her worn notebook, underlining quotes that stirred her soul. One afternoon during a business seminar, a guest lecturer spoke words that set Amara's heart ablaze. He was Dr. Olumide Johnson, a successful Nigerian entrepreneur who had built a small trading business into a multinational company. "Do not wait for opportunity to come," he said, his deep voice carrying across the hall. "In Nigeria, opportunities do not knock, they hide. You must dig them out with your own hands." Amara's pen stopped mid-sentence. She looked at him as if he were speaking directly to her. That night, she wrote in her notebook, "If opportunities hide, then I will dig. Even if my hands bleed, I will find them." Her first taste of entrepreneurship came quietly. In her second year, she noticed how many students complained about the high price of textbooks. Some could not afford them at Amara saw not just a problem, but a solution. She began buying second-hand textbooks from graduating students at cheap rates, then reselling them to new students at affordable prices. It was small, but it worked. She earned enough to buy her own meals and even send a little money back to Mama Ifioma. Chike, now in secondary school, wrote her letters proudly. "Sister, I tell my friends that one day you will be the boss of many companies." Her business grew quietly. She expanded to stationery, then to photocopying services, convincing a local shop owner to partner with her. Students began to know her not just as the scholarship girl, but as the girl who made things happen. But with growth came envy. One afternoon, as she stood by her small table of books near the hostel, Nosy passed by. She looked at Amara's setup and chuckled. "So, this is what success looks like? Selling old books by the roadside? You may have beaten me in school, Amara, but here you'll never belong." Amara smiled gently, refusing to bite back. "Perhaps," she said softly, "but even kings begin as servants." Ngozi's face hardened, but Amara turned back to her customers. She had no time for pride battles. She was building something real. Her professors began to notice her too. She always had sharp questions, always thought beyond the classroom. When others gave textbook answers, Amara spoke of solutions that connected business with real struggles: poverty, unemployment, and inequality. By her third year, she was offered an internship at a mid-sized company in Lagos. It was her first time in a real corporate office. She walked through the glass doors in her simple suit, her heart pounding. The smell of polished floors, the click of heels on tiles, the hum of air conditioners, it was a world far from Ojuelgba's noisy streets. But instead of being intimidated, she felt a fire rise within her. One day, I will not be an intern here. One day, I will own a place like this. That internship gave her skills, but also revealed the corruption and inefficiency in many Nigerian companies. Files piled on desks, bribes exchanged in whispers, managers who cared more about their pockets than their workers. Amara watched quietly, taking mental notes. "This is not how I will run my company," she told herself one evening as she walked home. "When my time comes, I will build something different, something honest, something powerful." University life tested her in countless ways: late nights, hunger, constant competition. Yet, she emerged stronger. Each obstacle became another brick in the foundation of the empire she was slowly building in her mind. And though she did not know it yet, her path was about to collide with destiny in ways even she could not imagine. For the poor girl mocked in school was no longer just a dreamer. She was becoming a builder. When Amara graduated from the University of Lagos, she stood tall in her simple gown, her head held high. The applause that day was not just for a student. It was for a survivor who had crossed fire and refused to burn. Mama Ifioma wept in the audience, clutching Chike's hand, whispering prayers of gratitude. But real life after graduation was nothing like the speeches promised. For months, Amara searched for work. She carried her CV in a plastic folder, moving from one office to another in Lagos. She queued outside tall glass buildings, waited for interviews, only to be told, "Sorry, we are looking for someone with connections." Or, "Perhaps you can come back when you have more experience." Experience? How was she to gain it if no one gave her a chance? Still, she refused to bend. She woke early each day, ironed her one good blouse, and walked the hot streets of Lagos until her shoes wore thin. Then, at last, a breakthrough came. A mid-sized logistics company offered her a job as a junior operations officer. The pay was small, but the opportunity was huge. Amara accepted immediately. At first, she worked with fiery passion, arriving before dawn, leaving long after the office was empty. She streamlined reports, reorganized schedules, and even suggested ideas that saved the company money. Her direct supervisor praised her openly. "You think like a leader, Amara. One day, you'll go far." But not everyone was pleased. Some older colleagues whispered that she was too ambitious. Others accused her of showing off by working harder than necessary. In Nigerian offices, mediocrity was often the culture, and Amara's fire threatened to expose their laziness. The greatest blow, however, came not from coworkers, but from the owner of the company himself. One afternoon, Amara discovered a pattern in the accounts. Money was being siphoned quietly, millions vanishing into ghost projects and fake vendors. She knew corruption when she saw it. After sleepless nights of hesitation, she decided to speak up. She gathered the files and took them to her supervisor. His face grew pale. "Amara, listen to me," he whispered. "You are young, ambitious. Do not get involved in this. This company, it is not what you think." But Amara's heart rebelled. "If we remain silent, we are part of the theft." Against his warning, she requested a meeting with the company owner, Chief Balagan, a man with a wide belly and an even wider smile. She presented her findings. For a moment, he listened quietly. Then his smile faded. "You are bold, young lady," he said slowly, "but boldness is dangerous. Do you think you can teach me how to run my business?" Amara stood her ground. "Sir, this money could pay salaries. It could grow the company. Instead, it is being stolen." The chief leaned back, his eyes narrowing. "You will learn that in this country, survival is not about honesty, but about power. If you want to survive here, learn to close your eyes." The next week, Amara was dismissed. The official letter cited disciplinary issues and inability to adapt to workplace culture. But she knew the truth. She walked out of the office that day with her box of belongings, her chest tight with pain. Her dreams felt shattered. She had given her all, and in return, she had been cast out. For weeks, she sank into despair. She stayed in her small, rented room, staring at the ceiling, wondering if Ngozi had been right all along, if she would always remain the poor girl mocked by others. But one night, as rain hammered the roof, she opened her old notebook from university. She saw the words she had written years ago after Dr. Johnson's seminar. "In Nigeria, opportunities do not knock, they hide. You must dig them out with your own hands." Tears filled her eyes. She whispered into the darkness, "Then I will dig again. If no company will give me a place, I will build my own." It was the birth of a new fire. Amara began sketching ideas. She remembered the inefficiencies she had seen in the logistics company, the corruption, the waste, the lack of care for workers. What if she created a company that was different? One that was honest, efficient, and built not on exploitation but on integrity? She had no office, no capital, no connections. But she had vision. And vision was a seed stronger than money. Slowly, with the little savings she had, and with Chike's growing support, she began the first steps of her entrepreneurial journey. The fall had been painful, but the fire it ignited would soon make her unstoppable. Amara began with almost nothing, just her mind, her courage, and a small wooden table in the corner of her rented room in Surulere, Lagos. The fan squeaked as it turned overhead, barely pushing away the humid heat, but she didn't care. She spread papers across the table, sketches of business models, notes from her old internship, and bold words written in thick marker. A company with integrity, a company for the people. She decided to start small. Logistics was her battlefield. She had seen how poorly deliveries were managed in Lagos, packages lost, drivers unpaid, customers frustrated. What if she could create a service that was trustworthy, transparent, and affordable? Her first challenge was capital. Banks laughed at her when she applied for loans. "Young lady," one banker sneered, "you have no collateral, no guarantors. Try again when you have something real." Investors turned her away with polite smiles. "You are too young," they said. "This is a man's industry. Do you think you can survive the competition?" But Amara refused to bow. She used her small savings to buy a second-hand motorcycle. With the help of Chike, now a strong young man in his 20s, they began offering delivery services to small shops in their neighborhood. Chike rode the motorcycle, Amara handled the bookings and payments. At first, business was slow. Customers doubted them. Competitors mocked them. Some days they made no profit at all, returning home with tired faces and empty pockets. One evening, after a particularly hard day, Chike slumped onto the floor and sighed. "Sister, maybe we should give up. Maybe this dream is too big." Amara placed a hand on his shoulder. "Chike, do you remember when we were children and people mocked us because of our poverty?" "Yes," he said softly. "And did we stop living?" "No. We kept going. This company will grow, brother. Even if we start with one motorcycle one day, we will have hundreds." Her faith rekindled his spirit. Word slowly began to spread. Unlike other delivery services, Amara insisted on strict honesty. No packages went missing, no lies were told about delays. Customers noticed. A small tailoring shop owner told another, then another. Soon, Amara's little company, which she named True Way Logistics, began to gain trust. But just as things were improving, trouble struck. One night, their only motorcycle was stolen. Amara woke to Chike, banging on the door, his face pale. "Sister, the bike, it's gone!" For a moment, despair hit her chest like a hammer. Without the motorcycle, their business was dead. She sat in silence, staring at the floor. But then, something rose inside her. That same fire from the day she lost her job. She clenched her fists. "We will not stop. If thieves think they can end us, they are wrong. We will start again." The next morning, she went door to door, speaking to her loyal customers. She explained what happened and promised she would not let them down. To her surprise, some of them offered to help. One shopkeeper paid her in advance for 6 months of deliveries. Another introduced her to a cousin who had an old van he was willing to rent cheaply. With their support, Amara and Chike started again, this time stronger. The van allowed them to carry larger goods, attracting bigger clients. Within months, their daily income doubled. Still, the road was rough. Larger logistics companies tried to crush them, offering lower prices just to drive her out. At one point, even Ngozi, now working in a wealthy firm, spotted Amara at a client's office. "Well, well," Ngozi sneered. "From selling old books in school to chasing deliveries on the street? Amara, some things never change." Amara only smiled. "You're right, Ngozi. Some things don't change, like my determination." Ngozi scoffed, but Amara walked away, her head high. She had no time for jealousy. By the end of the year, True Way Logistics had grown from 1 motorcycle to 3 vans and a small rented office space in Ikeja. It was still humble, but it was real. One evening, as Amara looked at her office sign a cheap board with the words True Way Logistics painted in blue, her heart swelled. "This is only the beginning," she whispered. "One day, this name will be known across Nigeria." The poor girl mocked in school was slowly, painfully, but surely carving her name into destiny. By the time True Way Logistics reached its 3rd year, Lagos had begun to take notice. The small company that started with a borrowed van was now running multiple vehicles across the city. Amara had hired 3 drivers, 2 clerks, and 1 accountant. But growth brought hunger for bigger opportunities. One afternoon, Amara received news of a government tender. The Ministry of Trade was seeking logistics partners for a nationwide distribution project, an operation that could transform a small business into a giant overnight. The contract value was in the millions. Amara's heart raced as she read the details. "If we can win this," she told Chike, "True Way will no longer be a small Lagos company. We'll go national." But she knew the truth. Such contracts were rarely won fairly. Corruption ran deep. Bribes whispered under tables, favors exchanged in smoky rooms, and yet she refused to bow to such practices. The night before the submission deadline, she sat in her office, head bowed over her proposal. Her staff had already left, but Chike stayed by her side. "Sister," he said, "others will pay their way to win this. What if we remain honest and lose?" Amara looked up at him, her eyes fierce. "Then we lose, but we will not sell our souls. This company was built on truth. If God wills it, we will win." The next weeks were tense. Competitors whispered, some even laughed openly at her audacity. "Who does she think she is?" they mocked. "A girl with 3 vans competing with giants?" Among those watching was Ngozi. Now working as a senior manager at a wealthy multinational, she saw Amara's name on the list of bidders. Her lips curved into a cold smile. Let her embarrass herself. Some people never learn their place. But destiny was not on Ngozi's side. When the results were announced, True Way Logistics was among the winners. The ministry praised their proposal for its clarity, transparency, and innovation. Unlike others, Amara had offered not just transportation, but a system that tracked deliveries in real time, reducing theft and delays. When she read the official letter, tears filled her eyes. "We did it, Chike. We did it honestly." The news spread quickly. Newspapers carried headlines. Young female entrepreneur wins major government contract. True Way's office overflowed with job applications. Investors who once ignored her now came knocking. Banks that had laughed at her now begged to open accounts for her company. But success came with shadows. Competitors who had lost the bid were furious. Some spread rumors that Amara had bribed her way to the top. Others tried to sabotage her operations, blocking trucks on highways, even bribing her workers to betray her. One evening, after a long day of battling delays, Amara returned to her office to find Ngozi waiting in the lobby, dressed in her sleek corporate suit. "Well, Amara," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "I must congratulate you. You've come far from the girl who once begged for notebooks. But let me give you advice: contracts come and go. Without the right connections, you won't last." Amara met her gaze calmly. Connections can build walls, but integrity builds foundations. We'll see which lasts longer. Ngozi's smile faded. She turned sharply and left. Meanwhile, Trueway's new contract transformed everything. Their fleet expanded from 3 vans to 20 trucks. Amara opened new branches in Abuja and Port Harcourt. For the first time, she stood in a real office building with glass doors and her company's logo etched in shining steel. One afternoon, as she walked through the headquarters, her staff rose from their desks and greeted her warmly. "Good afternoon, Madam Amara." She paused, taking it all in: the buzzing phones, the whirring printers, the busy drivers hurrying in and out. It felt surreal. She, the girl once mocked for wearing torn uniforms, now commanded a workforce of over 100. But as her company rose, so did the stakes. Political forces eyed her with suspicion. Rivals plotted in secret, and even some of her staff whispered about her rapid rise. That night, standing on her office balcony, Amara looked at the Lagos skyline glittering in the distance. She whispered to herself, "I have climbed far, but this mountain is not finished. They will fight me harder now, but I will not fall." The poor girl mocked in school was no longer just a survivor. She was now a leader of an empire in the making. Years passed, and Trueway Logistics grew into a powerhouse. What had begun with a single borrowed van now stretched across Nigeria, with fleets of trucks moving through every major highway and offices buzzing in Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, and Kano. Amara's name had become a symbol. Newspapers called her Nigeria's Iron Lady of Logistics. Universities invited her to speak, banks invited her to their boards, and young women across the country saw her as proof that poverty was not a life sentence. But for Amara, there was one circle left unclosed. One bright afternoon, she received an invitation. Her old secondary school in Abuja was hosting a grand reunion gala for its alumni, an event where the wealthy paraded their success. The letter addressed her as Madam Amara Okafor, founder CEO Trueway Logistics. She held it in her hands, her mind drifting back to the classrooms where she had been mocked, the cafeteria where laughter had cut through her soul, the playground where Ngozi and her friends had humiliated her. Chike urged her, "Sister, you must go. Let them see what you have become." At first, she hesitated, but then she smiled softly. "Not for revenge, Chike. I will go to show them that nothing, no laughter, no mockery, can bury a dream." The reunion hall glittered with chandeliers and silk drapes. Expensive perfumes floated in the air as former students arrived in polished cars and designer clothes. Ngozi was already there, dressed in a gold gown, surrounded by her old clique. She laughed loudly, making sure everyone heard her stories of corporate deals and luxury trips. Then, the doors opened, and silence followed. Amara walked in, tall and regal, dressed in a simple but elegant Ankara gown. Behind her came 2 of her senior staff, carrying documents and tablets. Heads turned, whispers filled the room. "Is that Amara? The scholarship girl?" "No. That's the CEO of Trueway Logistics." Even the principal, now retired but attending as a guest of honor, rose to welcome her. "Ah, Madam Amara, we are proud of you." Amara smiled humbly, shaking hands, greeting old teachers, but her eyes eventually met Ngozi's. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Ngozi's smirk faltered. She had always imagined herself standing above Amara, but the reality before her was undeniable. "Well," Ngozi finally said, forcing a laugh, "look at you. You've done well for yourself." Amara's gaze was calm, steady. "I didn't do it for myself alone. I did it for every girl who was told she wasn't enough, for every child who went hungry, for every dream that was mocked. The hall grew quiet. Many who once laughed at her now lowered their eyes in shame. Then, the event organizers called Amara to the stage. She walked up slowly, the spotlight falling on her. She spoke, not with bitterness, but with strength. When I was here, I was mocked because I was poor. My shoes were torn, my lunch was small, my future looked empty. Many believed I would not make it past these gates. But poverty is not the end of a story. It is only the beginning, if we dare to dream. Today, I stand not as that poor girl, but as the owner of the company that employs hundreds across Nigeria. To those who mocked me, I say thank you, you were the fire that sharpened me. To those who doubted me, I say thank you, you were the wind that pushed me higher. And to every student sitting here now, never let anyone write your story before you write it yourself. The hall erupted in applause. Some clapped with tears in their eyes, others out of guilt, and many out of pure admiration. Ngozi sat frozen, her hands stiff, her pride wounded beyond repair. But Amara did not look at her again. She stepped down from the stage, her head high, her heart at peace. For at last, the circle was complete. The poor girl mocked in school had returned not in anger, not in vengeance, but in triumph. And as she walked out of the hall that night, the city lights of Abuja shining beyond, she whispered to herself, "This is not the end of my story. This is only the beginning of an empire."